Greetings, everyone. Let's talk about some books. I just today, this is Sleepy Reader, aka Damien. Today, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about two audiobooks I listened to, which were made a nice pair. One was Leonardo da Vinci by Walter Isaacson, and had a very good narration by Alfred Molina. And the other was The Artist, the Philosopher, and the Warrior, Da Vinci, Machiavelli, and Borgia, and the World They Shaped by Paul Strathern, narrated by Nigel Patterson. And that was also pretty good narration. So obviously both books dealt with Leonardo da Vinci. Both books gave me a picture of, well, now I can't remember the exact years, but a picture of a very short period of time in history centered around the city of Florence, but also all of Italy and machinations with France and Spain and stuff. I enjoyed the Da Vinci book. And I loved The Artist, the Philosopher, and the Warrior. Maybe partially because of reading the Da Vinci book first. While Walter Isaacson's books are interesting, he loves geniuses. So he's always, like, I've also listened in the past to his book about Steve Jobs and the book about Einstein. He kind of has an axe to grind, so to speak, or a love of the idea of geniuses. So there's a huge emphasis on that. And maybe his research doesn't go as deep because he's kind of a popular biographer. Strathern, it felt like he had done a lot more research. I felt like I learned, in some ways, more about Leonardo in a book that only spent a third of its time on Leonardo. There was more thought given and a little deeper research. I can't remember now, but there were certain details that I go, oh, Walter Isaacson missed that one. There's an important fact. Walter Isaacson missed it. But anyway, the life life of these cities during the Renaissance, this flowering of civilization, was extremely fragile and constantly breaking apart. It's kind of incredible, really only short periods of time of peace and economic growth and all of that. It really struck me how history is mostly, some people they work hard, they make some advances, and someone else comes along with their swords and takes it all away from them. Very obvious, I suppose, but it just really gets you how, when you read, about a very specific time of history, how common that is. But anyway, so like I said, Isaacson is concerned about the idea of genius. Certainly, Strathern likes the idea of important people, pivot points in history, and the development of ideas and their influences over time. But he views, I think in the end, Machiavelli is kind of the hero of his book. Maybe because he's a little more human than the other two in a way, or a little more approachable. And someone who maybe struggled for something that was good. And not saying Da Vinci didn't, but Da Vinci was more sort of lost in his own head. And Strathern much more honestly, I think, focuses on the fact of the great flaw of Da Vinci, which is that there was genius in his notebooks, but there was a lot he did not accomplish that he could have, and a lot that was lost. What I learned, whether it's true or not, from the Isaacson book is that Da Vinci even made discoveries about valves in the heart that weren't rediscovered until the 1960s or 50s, I can't remember, by modern surgeons and people studying the heart. And that's just one example of, especially towards medical science, of the tragedy of Da Vinci, and how there's so little, so much that he could have done, so much he could have done for the advancement of science and health and all of that, had his works been disseminated properly. So in a way, he's, I don't know, a bit of a fool in a way. Especially I came away with that from Isaacson's, even though Isaacson didn't want me to think that. But Strathern has a very interesting thought, which, because the pivot point of Strathern's book is a year and a half, I think, where Da Vinci, Machiavelli, and Cesare Borgia, the third member of the story, all worked together, or mostly they worked for Borgia, right? Machiavelli spent a lot of time with Borgia because he was representing Florence. Leonardo was lent to Borgia by Florence, I believe, and did work for him. But Da Vinci got to experience the realities of war during his time with Borgia. And so all of his sort of excitement over the idea of war, like he's famous for inventing all these war machines and ideas for war machines, most of that weren't put to use. But all of his excitement for that went away. But also it may be that after seeing the hideousness of humanity, it was much harder for him to finish any of his projects afterwards. Whether that's really the real reason, we'll never know, but Strathern makes a interesting case for it, and it makes Strathern's book more interesting. Machiavelli's kind of a tragic character who cared so much for his city and took so many personal risks. He was an envoy, a bit of a spy, a bit of a diplomat, on the road all the time, looking to Florence's interests. And then what does he get in the end? He gets tortured and then exiled. And that's when he writes his famous books, where he's trying to curry favor with the powerful. But Strathern argues that it's his time spent with Cesare Borgia that is central to his ideas about what politics is really about. Now, there are apparently two Machiavelli books. One that he wrote more sort of favoring Borgia and that idea, and then one where he shifted his ideas a bit when a different group was in power in Florence. And I read Machiavelli's The Prince. That's the one influenced by Borgia. When I was in college, and I remember nothing about it. So reading this makes me want to try to read Machiavelli's The Prince. It'll probably mean something more to me now. It seems almost criminal that, maybe half the courses I took in college, I don't really remember a thing from them, or just teeny little tidbits. So anyway, but this book was very vivid. So of the two books, I highly recommend The Artist, the Philosopher, and the Warrior. And I think if you're a member of Audible, I think it's one of the ones that's currently available for free, or it was available for free when I read it, or with your membership. It's not free, of course, because you've paid a lot of money to Audible, but you know what I mean. And then the Da Vinci one, if you like a straightforward biography, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. Cesare Borgia is an interesting character, and Strathern doesn't go into it exactly how pointless. I mean, he truly represents the sort of world of pointless violence and political machinations that ends up in a zero-sum game, or worse, because of all the people who died. And Borgia his father was the Pope, who was poisoning other bishops to get their money and doing all kinds of other awful things, having orgies in the Vatican and bringing in prostitutes to have them pick up coins with their vagina or whatever. I mean, it's just insane. It gives you, reading this gives me a lot of sympathy for Martin Luther. I know I'm all over the place here. I should have written down notes or something, but I'm being sloppy, which is my way. So anyway, Borgia, I think he died right around age 30 after going through one, campaign after another, betraying people, playing tricks, doing all this stuff. I don't think he was tortured, but he was imprisoned. His generals, one of his main generals, was tortured pretty badly. It all ends badly. It does not go well. But Borgia's the person that fascinates Machiavelli, and perhaps is fascinating to us. I don't know. I'd like to learn more about his father, I guess, the Pope, and all of. I mean, I learned quite a bit about the Pope, but it might be interesting to know more. I think there's a book that may also be free on Audible about the Borgias, so I'm going to look for that next. Anyway, this has created a huge interest for me in just the world of Renaissance Italy. And it's stupid to me in my science fiction way of thinking. I thought, while reading these books, while reading this second book, The Artist, the Philosopher, and the Warrior, it's like, if aliens came to Earth, we call ourselves civilized. I don't know where we get that idea. No civilized aliens would look at Earth and say, hey, we want to meet these people. I mean, right now we have similar things going on in parts of the world. People being killed for what ultimately becomes a zero-sum game, or worse. People stealing things from other people through force of arms. Looking at Ukraine, looking at Israel and Hamas, looking at other hot spots in Africa and all of that. We have not learned, we have not improved. This was no flowering of civilization. There were maybe little bright spots amongst all the blood and suffering. Well, for instance, one thing that stood out to me is when everyone's using mercenaries, right? And when we gloss over the idea of mercenaries, you pay mercenaries money, but you also, what you do is you let them pillage and take whatever they want wherever they go. That's why they like working for you. And there's one description of some mercenaries finding a merchant, middle class, or not even middle class, I don't think, just a low-level merchant on the road, camping, on his way from one place to the other. They grab him, tie him, hang him from a tree by one foot, and light a fire under him to get him to tell him where his money is, if he even has any money. And I'm sure his ultimate fate was death. We don't even go into that. But brutal world. And still happening in parts of our world. And how dare we call ourselves civilized? Humanity, I'm embarrassed to be one of us. Oh, well. Anyway, fun books to read. I just made them seem not fun. But anyway, I'm really glad I read them. And it's launching me, I think, into some more Renaissance history next. Talk to y'all later.